Thank you so much for this opportunity. Let me ask first about the battlefield and about the negotiation table. How you assess these two?
Well, clearly, the last couple of months have seen some dramatic changes, advances by the Taliban that I don't think anybody expected. Certainly, the Afghan authorities didn't expect. Over the course of the last couple of weeks, that advance has slowed, and I think the Afghan security forces' defenses have stiffened some, and they've taken some districts back. That's encouraging. I think progress on the battlefield on the part of the Islamic Republic side will be important for sustaining progress in the peace process.
But why the peace negotiation not affected on the battlefield? Unlike we are seeing the violence or increasing day by day in Taliban capturing some center of districts in different provinces of Afghanistan.
Well, I think the Talibs have disappointed those in the United States that they negotiated with in 2019, the first part of 2020, who were led to believe that the conclusion of the U.S. Doha Agreement would lead to a diminution of violence, who were led to believe that release of prisoners that helped get negotiations started in September would lead to a diminution of violence. That diminution, lessening of the violence has not, of course, happened. If anything, it's increased quite substantially over the last 2 or 3 months. We're very concerned about it. We're expressing our views to the Talibs about that, and we are increasing our support to the Afghan defense and security forces in defending themselves.
Here in public opinion in Afghanistan, there is a question that United States lost the war in Afghanistan. Has the U.S. lost the war in Afghanistan?
Well, I think we accomplished the objectives that we set out in coming here, which had to do with Osama bin Laden and the presence of Al Qaeda and other terrorist groups that we were able very successfully to suppress. We established other goals for ourselves, including to help the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan stand back on its feet, rebuild its institutions, educate a new generation of future leaders, improve healthcare standards. All of those efforts, I think, have been quite successful. In addition, we invested billions and billions of dollars in the Afghan defense and security forces that are strong, that are substantial in number, that are better equipped and better trained, certainly way better than they were before we came here in 2001, to defend the interests of the Afghan people. So we accomplished what we set out in coming here to do. The next set of tasks, of course, belongs to the Afghan people and the Afghan defense and security forces, and all of those efforts will continue to have strong American support.
You mentioned about Al Qaeda. Do you think Al Qaeda failed in Afghanistan?
Oh, I think unquestionably Al Qaeda failed in this country. It failed in every conceivable way. It belongs where it is on the ash heap of history, especially insofar as this country is concerned. The United Nations and other groups report a small Al Qaeda presence remains here. That's obviously of some concern to us. There are Al Qaeda groups or Al Qaeda affiliated groups elsewhere in the world, and we and our friends and partners deal with those groups in every way we can.
And what's the United States information about Al Qaeda? They have already the relation with Taliban, or they cut it?
Well, let me put it this way. The Taliban made a certain set of commitments to the United States that are embodied in the U.S.-Taliban agreement last February that do not use the word cut ties, but substantively that's what the Talib's undertakings mean. That's what we expect to see. And we have an ongoing conversation with the Taliban about those commitments and about the status of their efforts to meet their obligations toward us. And I think that conversation will continue.
According peace agreement that you mentioned around February, what has the Afghanistan gained from this agreement that has been signed between the United States and Taliban?
Well, I think the principal thing that Afghans received out of that agreement was the promise of a peace process and the beginnings of negotiations in Doha. I was here in February 2020, and I remember very well the enthusiasm that Afghans showed for that opportunity for peace. It hasn't been entirely seized, and that owes, I think, principally to the work that the Taliban has been doing since that agreement was signed, that in many areas contradicts what the agreement provided for, and certainly what were our expectations. So we continue to our own engagement with the Taliban. Ambassador Halozad had met with them recently in Doha. We continue to have a conversation about their way forward, and maybe more importantly, about how to make the peace process succeed, and as well as a similar conversation we have with the authorities here.
But you don't think that this agreement legitimized this group?
I think if you read the text of the agreement, it's perfectly obvious that it didn't legitimize in a normal sense of the term. Throughout the agreement, there's a long and somewhat tortured phrase that uses the title that the Taliban prefer, and then qualifies that in a way that pretty clearly doesn't convey recognition. Of course, in order to get a peace process going, you have to deal with the sides, and to the extent that that means dealing with the Taliban, of course, that's an inevitable byproduct of that.
In these days, Taliban again trying to capture some other districts. If they try to capture more provinces or try to capture Kabul, will United States start working again?
Well, we are currently working to assist the Afghan Defense and Security Forces in a variety of ways, through continued airstrikes, which I'm sure you are aware of from the newspapers and other reporting. We continue to provide a robust program of security assistance, over $3 billion a year, that supports the payment of salaries, but also supports a purchase of equipment and munitions and other supplies that the Afghan Defense and Security Forces need to defend themselves and to defend the country. Those activities, and in particular, our ongoing security cooperation and assistance and counterterrorism cooperation assistance, will continue.
But there is a question with Afghan people that you mentioned about airstrike. From which place you are doing this airstrike?
The airstrikes that we're carrying out now come from over the horizon outside of Afghanistan.
And where will the fate of Afghanistan peace will be decided? Maybe in Turkey, maybe in Doha, maybe in Islamabad or battlefields?
We hope that the future of the peace process and the future of Afghanistan is decided at the negotiating table. I don't know that we put particular limits on where that negotiating table has to be. We said when talks began last September that we supported what both the authorities here and the Taliban leadership described as an Afghan-owned, Afghan-led process. If those talks are here, that's fine. If those talks are in Turkey, that's fine. If they are in Doha, that's fine. The important thing is that Afghans sit down at the table with appropriate help and support from the international community, through the United Nations in particular, and from other friends and partners, countries interested in the future of this country, to get somewhere and achieve a negotiated settlement. We still think that's possible.
About Turkey, are there still commitment to hold the Istanbul conference or no?
I think that's not something that's being talked about kind of in the present tense. The last important set of discussions took place in Doha, maybe a week or 10 days ago. A higher level delegation on the side of the Islamic Republic, led by Dr. Abdullah, Chairman Abdullah. And I think now the task is to see how to build off of that. There were limited results, of course, as I think is known. But how to build off of that, we, the authorities in Qatar, as well as the United Nations, through the personal representative, the Secretary General, Jean Arnaud, are working hard to see what's going to be the right next step.
But which huge challenges you are seeing in the peace negotiation right now? As we are seeing the daily report, there is a blame game between Taliban and Afghan government. They are escaping from the negotiation table. What is the real problem?
I would identify two or three. One big problem is the very high level of violence in this country that one side is primarily responsible for. That violence is not a vote for peace. It doesn't help make peace talks easier. It doesn't facilitate sensible negotiation and compromise by either side. And it's for that reason that we and others have called for a reduction in violence or a ceasefire as soon as that can practically be arranged. I think a second big hurdle has been really defining the terms and the specific issues on which the two sides are going to negotiate, and in particular, the Talib's unwillingness to describe in an open and direct way what's their vision, such that you might be able to compare the vision, the way forward as defined by leaders of the Islamic Republic, what that looks like, as opposed to the way the Talibs define it, and then start talking about where there are similarities and where there are differences. That's what you do in a negotiation. Unfortunately, the Taliban has not put forward its cards, so to speak, its positions on some of the most fundamental issues in a way that would lead to negotiations. The Islamic Republic has done that through a comprehensive peace proposal that was completed, I believe, in late April or early May, presented by a small commission, so to speak, to Dr. Abdullah. It's been made available to others in Doha. It may have been made available to the Taliban. I don't have personal knowledge of that, but it was a comprehensive peace proposal. Something needs to come from the Taliban for the talks to proceed constructively going ahead.
But by continuing this situation, how much you are concerned that Afghanistan will be back to 1990 or a civil war?
Well, we're not interested in that outlook at all, I think, any more than the Afghan people are. And it's for exactly that reason that we're working in several different areas to support the defense and security forces in the ways I described earlier, through airstrikes, through continued assistance, through expedited assistance, accelerated deliveries of assistance that we have indicated would be made available. We are engaging with the Afghan leadership on the need and the importance for a well thought out defense strategy around which Afghanistan's leaders, and especially its people, can rally to defend the interests of the Islamic Republic. That's the main path that we're on. The other path, of course, is the peace process. Peace is always difficult, and negotiations like this are hard. We are not taking no for an answer. And for that reason, Ambassador Khalilzad continues as aggressively as we can to push the parties effectively to the negotiating table and to rally the neighbors around Afghanistan similarly on a path that supports a way to a peaceful settlement.
But do you think without a ceasefire we can get to this aim?
A ceasefire would make it a lot easier. A serious reduction of violence, a reduction that Afghans could see and could feel as they felt in February 2020, a week or 10 days of nearly violence-free country. People felt that difference. And even if that were to be restored, I think that would send a powerful vote of confidence to Afghans about the future and would do a lot to facilitate negotiations.
2 or 3 days ago, Taliban requested for the success of peace negotiation that President Ghani should resign from the power. What's your idea about this request?
We support the Afghan people. We support the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. We support its constitution and its institutions. And that means we support the elected government here. That means President Ghani.
Now, the US troops withdraw from Afghanistan, but was the reason of the US military presence only to fight against Al Qaeda, or Taliban was also part of this mission?
Well, when we came to Afghanistan in 2001, it was in part to go after Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda, and it was in part to remove the Taliban from office, the Taliban which had given Osama bin Laden sanctuary and protection. It, of course, the underlying aim of American policy for 20 years has been to ensure that this country would not again be a base of terrorist activity that threatens the United States or our friends and allies. And so to the extent that there are violent extremist terrorist organizations here that threaten the United States, we're interested and we will continue to be interested, and we will find ways to protect ourselves in the months and the years going forward from threats that might emanate from this country.
What will happen to the Kabul-Washington Security Pact when United States forces withdraw from Afghanistan?
Well, the United States remains committed to the U.S.-Afghan bilateral security agreement. I believe that the Afghan government remains committed to the bilateral security agreement. It provides a framework that remains valid and actually crucial for the security assistance that we continue to provide to this country and that we expect to continue to provide to this country in the months and years ahead.
But what is exactly the new chapter relation between the Kabul and Washington?
Well, that's a good question, and not one that I can answer. That's a chapter that we're in the process of developing and writing now. It depends, of course, on how Afghanistan gets through this trial that it's enduring at the moment, and the ability of the Afghan Defense and Security Forces actually to protect the citizens and protect the institutions of this country. We have confidence about that process, but I think how that unfolds, how America's role here unfolds in association with that will be important for writing that new chapter. Broadly, the new chapter in our relations is one in which there's less military and certainly much less U.S. military presence in this country. There is more diplomacy in the balance of our relationship. There is more diplomacy. There is more economic assistance. There is more engagement of other kinds with civil society groups, journalist groups, engagement with citizens around this country. That's normal diplomacy, and I think as I look at that new chapter, I'm very enthusiastic about it because it's what people in my profession do, as opposed to what our soldiers do.
So, how U.S. could assist Afghan forces without military presence in Afghanistan?
Well, we intend to continue to assist the Afghan Defense and Security Forces with respect to salaries, so that soldiers can be paid, to assist in the procurement of equipment and particularly on the Air Force side, but other military equipment that's necessary to fight effectively, to acquire and provide munitions, rockets and bombs and ammunition and those sorts of things, so that the Afghan forces have what they need. We and also our NATO allies are committed to continue our training programs. They won't be in Afghanistan. Those programs will be carried out. That doesn't make them any less effective.
For a political settlement, as you know, in Afghanistan, it needs the commitment of regional countries. How you see for now, we are reaching for a regional consensus on the peace process, or no?
Yes and no is, I think, the honest answer to your question. When we've had conversations with the neighbors, all of the neighbors, they all define the desired end state or what they would like eventually to see here in terms that are very similar to ours and very similar to those of the leaders of the Islamic Republic, I might add. So at a high level of generality, the neighbors share the same goals. They want an Afghanistan that's at peace, that's sovereign, reasonably united, unified, that meets the aspirations of the Afghan people, that preserves the gains of the last 20 years, and that especially is a stable place and does not export instability to their countries. And those are all reasonable things that I think we support. It gets more complicated when you start dealing with some of the specifics. Of course, Afghanistan's relationship with Pakistan is complicated, and I know that public views here are intense on that. Iran is a complicated country in a variety of respects, including because we don't have a relationship with Iran, and therefore it's extremely difficult for us to work with them in a kind of operational way in support of peace here. The Central Asian states, we work with and engage closely. We've had a series of trilateral meetings, United States, Afghanistan, plus Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, to try to coordinate policy and understand among the three, each of those groups of three, where our common interests are and where some United States support or assistance might be helpful in promoting better ties and in promoting those countries' constructive involvement on behalf of peace and stability here. And the whole conversation about regional connectivity that was the subject of a conference maybe now 2 weeks ago in Tashkent kind of reflects a lot of that effort. So, the individual pieces are complicated. There's a lot of diplomacy that has gone on and is going on, and I think will take place now over the course of August and September, to try to coalesce the countries, not just to have a common view, but actually to bring about a suitable settlement to help the Afghan people, I should say, bring about a suitable settlement to 20 years of conflict.
Mr. Khalilzad concerned that some of the regional countries not ready to helping the peace process in Afghanistan, but not named any countries. You think which country in the region is not ready to help the peace process in Afghanistan?
I'm not sure what country he was referring to. To be honest, I didn't see his remarks in the context in which he made them.
For the conclusion, what is your view in how much we will get a political settlement?
I'm an optimist. I think it is possible for Afghanistan to find a political way forward. I think both sides, both the Islamic Republic leadership and Taliban leaders, have long recognized there is no military solution to this conflict. If you believe that, then there has to be a political solution to the conflict, and that means a negotiated settlement. So, I think it's important that work continue. It is equally important that Afghanistan and the Afghan Defense and Security Forces and their leadership take strong and effective measures to show to the Afghan people that their interests are going to be protected, that this country will be protected, that people can rally around, that political leaders can rally around. That's important not just for security here, but I think that's important for the peace process to succeed. We hope it does.
Thank you so much, Mr. Amos.
Thank you.
Thank you.